Avinash Poddar and Advocate CA Anchal Poddar ji. Other partners being Celine Doshi, CA Ashu Dalmia, CA Shefali Girdarwal, CA Vishal Poddar, myself Advocate CA Pramod Dokania, Advocate CA Amish Desai, and Advocate CA Avdesh Sharma. We are a national level boutique law firm specializing in providing comprehensive legal assistance and litigation support across a broad spectrum of practice areas. Our expertise encompasses taxation, both direct and indirect taxation, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, PMLA, Benami transactions, corporate laws including Companies Act and IBC, SARFAESI Act and other statutory litigations and legal services. Our firm is headquartered in Surat with branch offices strategically located in Mumbai, Delhi, Pune, Ahmedabad, Nashik, Vadodara, Faridabad, Gurgaon, and Rajkot. In addition, we maintain a robust network associate offices across India, enabling us to provide seamless legal services and comprehensive support to the clients nationwide. That's a brief on our firm. With that introduction, I'll request Vishal to take over.
Thank you, Pramodji. So welcome everyone to another thought-provoking topic, a topic which is very, I'll say, hot today, especially for all those who are handling litigation. So now this topic is regarding the interest applicable under GST. We all know interest is leviable under Section 50 of the CGST Act. But the question that we are going to discuss today is not about the computation or the timelines, etc. The moot question that we have to answer today, or we can say discuss and deliberate on today, is that whether interest requires adjudication, like how you require tax to be adjudicated, whether interest requires adjudication. Second, is there any time limit for demanding interest? So we have curated few case scenarios. I think this can be the basis to start our deliberation today. So firstly, the first case scenario is the case where a assessee or a taxpayer has admitted a tax liability. There is a self-assessed tax and interest is being recovered on this self-assessed tax without issuing a show cause. So first case scenario is you had a self-assessed tax liability and you did not pay interest on that. Now can the interest be collected from you without any recovery mechanism? Can it be done directly under Section 79? Second case scenario is department is demanding interest for those periods like 17, 18, 18, 19 for which the timeline for issuing show cause or even doing adjudication under 73, 74 has expired. Until date, no adjudication is done. So this is the second case scenario we are regularly getting queries on. And the third case scenario is order is already passed under Section 73, 74, but without adjudication of interest. So now can they adjudicate interest independently? And scenario 4, order is passed under any of these sections demanding interest. So now the difference between 3 and 4 is in 3, there was only adjudication of tax liability, no interest was adjudicated. Can they demand it? Case scenario 4, order is passed under 73, 74 and even interest was demanded in that. Taxpayer even paid the demanded tax and interest, everything. Later on, the new officer, the incumbent officer finds that the interest computed was incorrect in the previous order. Another question here is, can this case also be demanded? So these are the 4 different case scenarios we have come across in recent times. So we thought we can take this as our today's discussion points. Some moot questions that come up from these case scenarios is, first, we all normally follow this dictum that interest follows tax. If yes, whether it follows self-assessed tax, within self-assessed tax, whether the self-assessed tax which is paid or which is still unpaid. Second, whether it follows the tax which is adjudicated yet to be paid. And third, whether it follows the tax which is still under dispute. So we all say interest is automatic, interest is having the color of tax, but which tax? Self-assessed, adjudicated, or disputed? Second moot question that we can address today is whether interest requires a separate adjudication procedure, or can we say that interest recovery is automatic. Following up with the first question, that since tax and interest are one and the same, or interest takes the color of tax, whether recovery of interest can be automatic. Third moot question to be answered is whether demand and recovery of interest is subject to any time limit. Like we have timelines under various sections, whether interest recovery or adjudication also has timelines. Fourth, whether interest demanded has to be quantified first in your DRC-1A, then in your DRC-1, or can it be directly quantified in DRC-07? So we have another present live case where no interest was quantified in the pre-show cause notice or even in the show cause summary, but directly it is quantified in DRC-07 whether this interest is a valid interest. Now, before we take up the discussion, there are some relevant provisions. I thought that I'll put it across to you. So interestingly, there are a few cases where the law itself provides that no show cause would be required. First is 7512, which says that notwithstanding anything contained in 7374, where any amount of self-assessed tax in accordance with the return furnished under section 39 remains unpaid, either wholly or partly, or any amount of interest payable. So there is or for interest. Now we are mainly concerned with the interest portion only, or any amount of interest payable on such tax remains unpaid. Can the same be recovered under the provisions? So it is saying, yes, the same can be recovered directly by virtue of section 79, which is the recovery provision. Now, interestingly, there is an explanation added to this, which says that for the purpose only of this section, subsection, the expression self-assessed tax shall include the tax payable in respect of details of outward supplies furnished under 37, but not included in the return furnished under 39. So first is where no show cause is required for taking the recovery action is the case of 7512, that is self-assessed tax. Another case is where you will not require a show cause is where there can be a direct order under 62, 63, 64. That is where it is order passed for non-filers of returns or the people who are unregistered but liable to pay tax, etc. Another important provision, we all know 73, where it requires the officer to issue a show cause. Similarly, 74, where in case of fraud, suppression, etc., it requires the officer to issue show cause. Then rule 142. Now here's something interesting I wanted to highlight. What does rule 142 says? It talks about the notice and the order of demand, which has to follow along with show cause or along with the order. You have to give a summary. So what it says, the proper officer shall serve along with the notice under section 52, 73, 74, 76, 122. Now this is interesting. As far as I know, there is no specific mention of notice under 122, but fine. So it is saying that along with the notice issued under these sections, the officer is required to issue a summary thereof electronically in GST DRC-01 or a statement under subsection 3, 73, 73.3 or 74.3, again a summary thereof in electronic form, that is in DRC-02, specifying the details of tax payable. So 73, 74 are sections for show cause. 142 deals with the summary notice. Then this is 75. 75.12 I've already covered in my first slide. Also, I wanted to highlight very important point in 75.9. What it says, this will be of interest to our today's discussion. The interest on tax short paid or not paid shall be payable whether or not specified in the order determining the tax liability. This section I found very relevant for today's discussion. How it will be useful, that we can come back and discuss. And then we have this recently introduced rule 142 dealing with intimation of certain amounts liable to be recovered under 79. So 79 is a section for recovery, but this rule provides for providing an intimation before you initiate recovery. What it says, where in accordance with section 75, read with rule 88C. Now what does 88C deals with? 88C deals with the scenario where you have reported something in GSTR1, but it is not matching with 3B because it is not covered over there. So read with rule 88C or otherwise, any amount of tax or interest has become recoverable under section 79 and the same has remained unpaid. The proper officer shall intimate electronically on the common portal the details of the said amount in form DRC-01D, directing the person in default to pay the said amount along with applicable interest, or now this part is of relevance, as the case may be the amount of interest. So only when the amount of interest is also pending, this particular rule provides that the officer is supposed to give you intimation in DRC 1D within 7 days of the date of the said intimation, etc., etc. So I think these are some relevant points which can be of relevance today. Now with this, I'll go back to my moot questions that have been posted at the start so that we can take up these moot questions and start answering. And I will invite all my panelists to please join me for discussion on this. So my first moot question is, we normally use this terminology in all taxation laws that interest takes the color of tax, interest follows tax. If this dictum is correct, first, whether it is correct or not, we have to deliberate. Second, if this dictum is correct, with respect to GST, whether this particular dictum applies in case of only self-assessed tax, or in case of adjudicated tax, or in case of disputed tax, or all three. So I think we can start deliberation on this. If Ashu Bhaiya is there, I'll request Ashu Bhaiya to start deliberation on this.
I think what we have discussed, section 75 says if something is payable as interest, can be recovered under section 79. I think the moot question is, I have paid, take an example, I have filed the returns late, paid the taxes after 6 months or 8 months. Can recovery will be made, can be made under section 79, that is section 75(12), without any giving further notice? What I feel, if you read the section 75(12), it says the amount payable. If amount payable is not determined first, what I feel as a basic jurisprudence, if I am not known what amount has to pay, that cannot be recovered. Something should be there. The first should be what is the amount paid. That should be determined, and then the question of recovery comes. So I think your question comes into two parts. When we talk about section 17, section 12, once the amount payable is determined, then recovery, direct recovery under section 79 is possible or not. So what I feel, if we go to the section 12, without a direct interpretation, if we go that, if the amount is determined, then it is directly recoverable under section 79, because for that purpose, no assessment is required to be done. What is the purpose there? Because the tax has been paid, that has been late paid, or there was some delays into that, and only on the party, only interest has to be recorded on that part. But the problem arises, I don't know how much of the amount has to be recovered. Officer directly can go into section 79 or not. I feel not. But they have to give the intimation first. This is the amount recoverable as interest. And after that, I feel, in my humble understanding, section 79 can be started directly after intimation.
So we, as I already covered, there is this new rule 142B, which requires an intimation to be given specifically in relation to this matter only.
Okay.
So I just read that rule.
If you want, I can. If you have the rule 142B with you.
Yeah.
And CBIC has also issued a circular for that purpose, I think, instruction.
Yeah, this is the rule. So it says that where in accordance with section 75 read with rule 88C or otherwise, an amount of tax interest has become recoverable. Now this language is important, has become recoverable under section 79, and the same has remained unpaid, the proper officer shall intimate electronically on the common portal in form DRC 1D. So what you are saying is that there has to be intimation.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, please.
So what you may said that there has to be intimation. So this is already the provision there in the law requiring intimation. But now the point that you were raising is that until and unless this amount is quantified, you are saying that this is not recoverable under 75(12).
Yeah, because the point is, even what GST Act is saying, that's fine. But you cannot say, without quantifying the amount, you cannot make the recovery. First, you have to make me aware what is the amount. I think in this notice, the amount should be there because they are saying within 7 days of the such intimation shall be posted in electronic liability ledger register.
Exactly. So normally what it happens is that whenever you have filed your GSTR1, let us say showing outward sales supplies amounting to rupees 10 lakhs, let us say tax amount 1,80,000, but you are filing your return GSTR3B with only outward supply of rupees 1 lakh and tax amount 18,000. So they are
Yes.
considering this difference 9 lakhs as the differential taxable amount and the differential tax as the tax liability, which becomes a self-assessed tax liability.
Yes.
So this
And
is how.
Vishal, what is happening, the example you have given, for that purpose, they are issuing one further notice also. I think DRT, one form is issued for the difference
This
in
is
GSTR
1D. This is the form 1D.
No,
This is
not
the form.
1D. When
Okay.
there is a difference in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B, they issue one form. I'm not remembering the name of the form. Asking the explanation for the difference in GSTR 1 and 3B.
So is it ASMT 10?
No. I'll tell you. That is a new form for introduced.
Somebody
DRT
saying
018.
DR
Yeah.
1A.
No, not 1A, not 1A.
The 1A is.
No, not 1A. I think 1B, 1C, two forms for
That's why I'm saying it is 1D, na?
Not 1D.
Somebody saying DRC 1B.
1B, yeah, that may be. Just a minute, yes. Yes. So, for that purpose, DRT 1B is issued, so that if the recovery is on account of GSTR 1 and 3B, they are giving the notice before that, asking the explanation of that.
Okay.
And after that recovery is being done, if the explanation is not there or you're not, don't submit the explanation or explanation is not acceptable to the department.
Okay.
So what we can do here, our discussion can be on three grounds, what I feel. One, liability on account of the order passed by the department. Section 73, 74 order has been passed and there is tax demand and interest liability on account of that interest. Second can be when we have paid the GSTR 3B, but we have paid the GSTR 3B and the GSTR 3B has been filed late. And the third can be there is a difference in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. So when we're talking about GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B difference, they are issuing a particular form asking the reason for difference, and on that basis the demand is further recovered. When there is a on account of delay filing of GSTR 3B or any other reason, the DRC 01D is issued. And in that case, I think they are issuing, they are posting it into the electronic liability register also. That means they are quantifying it. Now, after that, your question arises whether they can do it without issuing the show cause notice or not.
Correct. So that is why, that is the main question we are deliberating, and we are deliberating mainly with perspective of interest only.
Yes.
So with respect to this admitted tax liability, can interest be recovered without initiating any proceedings under 73, 74 or without issuing a show cause? Or can it be only on the basis of this intimation?
See, if you go as per the law, it is possible, but if you go to the whole jurisprudence and the system of the law, something has to be recovered, a proper notice has to be there for that purpose.
So can't this DRC 1B or this new 1D serve that purpose? Because we need to just intimate, that is the main point. If you have already admitted the tax, the liability you have yourself disclosed, whether it is not sufficient, is there any adjudication left in that? That is the main point. Whether only intimating you that, okay, you have not paid the tax and pay it in 7 days, is it not sufficient intimation?
That is the ground. Different courts are taking that ground also. There are various opposite judgment of that purpose. Some courts have held, no, it can be directly recovered. Some have held, see, there is a possibility, see, you have to issue the show cause notice for that purpose.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Avinash, your inputs on this. I'll go back to the moot question. So our moot question is this, that we generally say that interest follows tax. So whether interest will follow a self-assessed tax also, an adjudicated tax also, and a disputed tax also.
Say, to some extent, I'll agree with Ashubhai, but what I read as a student of law is that certainly interest follows tax. There is no dispute about it. Because interest, it has been held time and again by the Honorable Apex Court that interest is compensatory in nature. But the question arises, if there is no provision of levy of interest, then also can the interest be levied? I hope you are getting the point. If there is no question of levy or there is no provision pertaining to levy of interest, the interest cannot be levied. But unfortunately, fortunately, there is section 50 subsection 1, which is pertaining to the levy of interest. And therefore, we need to read section 50 subsection 1 before going into any further discussions, which clearly says that if there is any delay in the payment because of any reason whatsoever, then the taxpayer on his own must calculate and pay the tax, pay the interest. This is how section 50 subsection 1 is worded. Now, there are a lot of debates which are going on that if input tax credit has to be reversed, whether it is going to be covered here or not, whether on that interest can be levied or not. We are not going into all this. We are in the pure question, which you have said. If I have to read this 50 subsection 1, see, it very clearly says every person who is liable to pay tax in accordance with the provisions of this act or rules made thereunder, but fails to pay the tax or any part thereof to the government within the period of prescribed, shall, for the period for which the tax or any part remains unpaid, pay on his own interest at such rate not exceeding 18%, as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council. Then they have added this proviso, which says that you have to pay on the net. And if you are not paying on your own, and if it is being paid on the basis of certain inquiries on under section 73 or 74, then you will have to pay on gross. This is what the proviso says. Now, let us come to the mute question. Go back to that question, please. Your question is whether adjudication is required or not. So let us see how the interest is flowing from the law. One, when you are filing a return and the tax is unpaid, then interest is automatic. Section 75 subsection 12, if we read carefully, it is applicable when there is a return filed under section 39 with the unpaid tax liability, then that unpaid tax liability or any interest on such tax, meaning thereby the tax which is disclosed in section 39 return but not paid, that can be recovered under section 79. I'm just trying to reiterate once again. 75(12), the original proviso is applicable or provision is applicable when there is an amount declared in section 39 return and it is unpaid, or the interest on such unpaid amount is not paid, then section 79 can be recovered. Let me read this. Notwithstanding anything contained in section 73, 74, it is non-obstant, therefore overriding, where any amount of self-assessed tax in accordance with the return furnished under section 39 remains unpaid, either wholly or partly, or any amount of interest payable on such tax remains unpaid, meaning thereby the tax which is unpaid under section 39 return, the same shall be recovered under the provisions of section 79. Meaning thereby section 75(12) is applicable only in cases where the amount is declared in a return and not paid. And to my understanding, there can never be any situation wherein the tax is declared in section 39 return and unpaid, because 3B cannot be filed with the outstanding liability. And therefore, there was a specific agenda in the GST Council meetings, and it was discussed at length that this is going to make the entire provision redundant, because ना आप 3B का रिटर्न भर सकते हो अनपेड और ना ये प्रोविजन कभी एप्लीकेबल हो सकता है. I hope I'm very clear.
Yes.
Then they have inserted an explanation which expands the scope and which says that even if you are declaring in GSTR 1, which is again a return as per the department, if you are declaring in GSTR 1 but not in GSTR 3B, then that can be recovered under section 79 or through 79. So then explanation which has been inserted becomes relevant. Now let us go to the question which you have asked. Whether 7512 can be applicable? Yes, 7512 can be applied when the amount is declared in return. Either it is GSTR 3B and not paid. It can be recovered under section 79 directly without any issuance of show cause, or any interest which is not paid in the return which is declared. So meaning thereby, if you have filed a return, amount is unpaid, then the unpaid amount as well as the interest thereon, both can be recovered under section 7512 read with 79. Or second situation is, you have declared, as you have said, declared a liability of 1 crore rupees in GSTR 1, but in 3B only declared 1 lakh rupees liability. Then that 99 lakhs difference can be recovered directly under section 79 read with 7512.
I think there is one more scenario.
No,
I have
let me just complete, because I lose that flow.
Yeah.
Now, the issue is section 39 return can never be filed with the outstanding liability. And therefore, the question which arises here is, I have paid my liability under section 39 return, but that was belatedly filed and the interest is unpaid.
That's the point.
Can that also be covered? I believe no. Because if we read this provision completely, it says, or any amount of interest payable on such tax remains unpaid. Now, such tax, if I have to connect, I will have to read it again. It says, where any amount of self-assessed tax in accordance with the return furnished under section 39 remains unpaid. So if the tax is unpaid, then tax and interest both can be recovered. If the tax is paid, but belatedly, then whether it is applicable on interest, my personal understanding is, if I have to take a conservative view, then yes, they can recover under section 79 read with section 7512. But now I'll come with Ashubai. Ashubai has said that there has to be an amount payable. See, 7512 has to be read with section 79. And section 79 starts with where the amount of there is an amount payable and not payable.
Correct.
So therefore, they have to determine that amount payable, maybe by way of a show cause notice, or maybe by way of that what form they have shown, 1D or something like that. So that will suffice. So now let me try to sum up this. One scenario wherein 39 return is filed, 3B is filed without payment of tax, then the tax as well as the interest on that unpaid tax, both can be recovered directly under section 7512 read with 79. Second situation wherein 39 tax has been paid in return, but belatedly, then being conservative, although that is not my nature, but let us presume conservatively, yes, the amount can be recovered because that is the intention of the law. Amount can be recovered under section 79 read with 7512. Third situation wherein we have declared in GSTR 1 but not paid in GSTR 3B, then in that case that amount can be recovered, considering that to be a return file under section 39 or the difference, and the interest also can be demanded on that. But in all these three situations, the amount payable has to be determined. So that amount payable can be determined by way of a letter, by way of a notice, by way of that 1D or whatsoever. Now let me come to another situation wherein, as per me, the adjudication is mandatory, even for interest. If there is no adjudication, then even 75(9) will not be in a position to help. And what is that? If the amount or the invoice is not declared in 39.
37.
39, 3B.
Okay.
And it is also not shown in 37. And the search or audit, it determines that this is the liability which is unpaid. Then in that case, 7512 is not applicable. And if 7512 is not applicable, the mute question is interest also is not applicable. The 7512 interest also cannot be recovered directly under section 79. They will have to adjudicate. They will have to adjudicate the tax. They will have to adjudicate the interest portion thereon. And then the liability will have to be freezed and the recovery can initiate, subject to the appeal remedies and all those remedies. This is what I understand. So therefore, it is very clear. If you have shown in written not paid, then interest and the tax can be recovered, subject to the amount being payable and the determination thereof. If you have declared in one but not paid, then also it can be recovered, interest also can be recovered, but amount payable has to be determined. I am very sure about it. Without that, you cannot do that. And last but not the least, if neither in 3B nor in 1, if there is no declaration and then the adjudication takes place, then even for interest, the adjudication is mandatory.
Great. So when you are saying amount has to be ascertained, so if I have disclosed in GSTR 1 but not in 3B, or that hypothetical situation 3B is not 3B is filed without paying tax, which is practically not possible. So the amount is determined in both these cases. No?
No. See, amount has to be determined by way of either a notice and then the order,
Okay.
or by giving some calculation like 1D. It might be
Hmm.
having some calculation, some basis of the calculation which can be challenged. Because see, today only we were discussing that what is the document against which an appeal can be filed. Can this interest document is a valid document against which the appeal is filed? Then I and Ashubhai both were of the view that yes, because it is a communication sent to us. And the appeal can be filed against any communication through which we are aggrieved. So therefore, if 1D is also sent or any that particular document or letter or notice is sent to us and the officer is not willing to drop it, then I am of the view that we can also file a appeal against that particular notice. So therefore, the determination is important.
Great. Any inputs, Ashubhai, on this? You're on mute.
Continue that way.
Okay,
Vinayak has
perfect.
covered comprehensively that way.
Great. Now comes another very burning question. Whether demand and recovery of interest is subject to time limit. Now this question arises when the interest is not bound by 73, 74 or 76 notice. That is, interest is being demanded through this 1B or through other reasons like under 79. In those cases, can the recovery happen despite of the time limit period under 73, 74 being expired? Because now if we have answered the first two in positive in let us say 2 or 3 case scenarios like assessed tax liability, 1 disclosed, 3B not disclosed, 3B filed late, or 3B filed without paying tax. In all those cases, can this recovery of interest happen through this intimation? The answer is yes. We've just concluded that there has to be some communication, which is this 1D, etc. But the point is there a timeline? Because there is no timeline provided in these sections for issuing this particular intimation or a form. This question means that in case of self-assessed tax liability, where there is no 73-74 required as concluded till this point, do we have to pay interest even for the remote test period? Ashubhi.
See, unfortunately, there is no direct limitation in the law for the recovery of interest. Now the question arises, it can be for infinite period. I feel that is not the intention of the law. What I feel, even if the limitation, there is a limitation of tax even in 73, 74. How the interest can be set free for unlimited period of time.
Then I have a counter question. Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a counter question. Is there a time limit for recovering self-assessed tax? Because this interest is flowing from self-assessed tax as per our discussion till now.
Yes.
So 73-74, I agree, it is a disputed tax, and we just concluded for disputed tax, you require the entire proceedings under 73-74, and once there is a proceeding, automatically the timelines and the procedures would follow. Now we are on the point, what we just concluded, that for the self-assessed tax of those 3 categories, which we just concluded, we do not require 73-74. It can be done through intimation, which we all have agreed. Now for that tax, whether any time limit for recovery, because interest is following that tax.
See, even for self-assessed, even let's say we take an example. If we have declared something in GSTR 1 and not shown in GSTR 3B, as per new explanation, that becomes a self-assessed tax.
Right.
If the department don't issue DRC 01C, because there is a time limit, and don't issue 73-74, can recovery be made?
I think they have to issue now this new form under Rule 142B.
That I'm saying,
Yes.
basically.
Now let us say
even
they come to know after 10 years.
Yes, because for self-assessment tax, there are two possibilities. One is virtually not possible. I am showing the liability but not paying through GSTR 3B. That is not practically possible. The
Correct.
only possibility left when I have shown something in GSTR 1 but not shown in GSTR 3B.
Or another possibility, I filed GSTR 3B late without paying interest, though that is disputed, but for the time being, conservatively we are.
I'm referring to your question for the self-assessed tax.
Okay.
So only the one category of the self-assessed tax cannot is required to be recovered when I have shown something in GSTR 1 and not paid in GSTR 3B. Even that, what I feel, without issuing DRC 01C or 1D cannot be recovered. That is my understanding.
Agreed.
And again, the question arises whether there is a time limit for that. I think if the DRC 1C and 1D has not been issued, even that cannot be recovered without issuing the show cause notice under section 73-74. What I feel, if I have shown something in GSTR 1, not in GSTR 3B, DRC 1C or 1D, whatever the forms are not specified, not issued, then the direct recovery I think cannot be made under section 73 and 74. Avinash, if you can give some input for that. We are talking first only for the self-assessed tax, but not paid, because there is a very good question: can there is time limit for self-assessed tax or not? So what I feel, without issuing DRC 01C or without issuing 73-74, even the self-assessed tax cannot be recovered. So indirectly the time limit comes in there.
I believe, Bhaiya, that 1C, 1D, the relevant form is the only mechanism, but there is no time limit for self-assessed tax, because that is the tax what I have agreed or I have determined myself. So I understand that there is no time limit. Let's see what Avinash Bhaiya has to say on this.
I also believe the same, because if I have declared something as my liability, then it can be, and I have not paid it, or maybe because of any reason whatsoever, then certainly it can be recovered at any point in time. That's not an issue. But when it comes to recovery, then certainly there has to be some time logging. But recently, like belated adjudication or delayed adjudication is one matter, or one issue which is being argued in various high courts, जहाँ पे उन्होंने show cause दे दिया था, but because of some reason they kept it in the logbook. After that, 10 years के बाद Supreme Court ने कोई decision दिया. Thereafter, they have started issuing show cause notice or adjudicating. So then majority of the people have went to the high courts saying that this is a delayed adjudication. After 15 years, if you will adjudicate and ask the interest and penalty, then no business can survive under the service tax excise or GST regime. So therefore, the honorable courts have started taking a view that this is not permissible. Within 3 years, you should have decided. And plus the law says that within 6 months or 1 year, if I have to take section 73 of the Finance Act, it used to say 6 months. Within 6 months, the adjudication must happen. So if that is not the case, and if you are not adjudicating, you are adjudicating after 10 years, which is not proper. So if I have to relate that with GST, if I have declared something in my returns, if it is an outstanding liability, then it may be recovered at any point in time. There is no requirement of any limitation to be imposed upon or discussed or argued. Even the Limitation Act may not be applicable. But if it is an adjudication process, then certainly the limitation and everything is going to apply. Even I would say, if it is adjudicated and the interest is not paid and then the interest has to be recovered, for that also the time limitation will apply. You cannot come out after 10 years and say now pay us interest.
So for self-assessed tax, according to you, there is no time limit. It can be recovered anytime, obviously along with interest. But in case of adjudication done, after the adjudication is complete, and then interest has to be levied or recovered, that requires a timeline. This is what you mean to say.
Yes. And this is what is apparently my view. But to be very honest, as an aggressive view, if any such case I have to file, I'll say that once the limitation expires in the Limitation Act, then even the admitted liability cannot be recovered.
Then I have an interesting question. Limitation will require 3 years timeline. 3 years will be
Yes.
counted from which date?
It will be counted from the date when 5 years lapses, maybe.
So
3 years
otherwise it will be earlier than the 74 time limit.
No, that cannot happen.
Yeah. So 3 years from the end of the 74 or now 74A timeline, the
Correct.
latest timeline.
Because that is a view which may get or see the light of the day sometime in future, because Limitation Act has that purpose only. You cannot sit tight on some recoveries and then at the fag end after 15 years you will start recovering. That is not permissible. The Limitation Act will come into play.
Great. Whether interest demand has to be quantified in the pre-show cause or the show cause summary notices, or can it be directly quantified in DRC 07 and it be treated as valid? My belief is that DRC 1A or 1 both requires quantification, but it is mainly towards tax, because interest will get quantified the day when the liability gets materialized. So I think even if it is not quantified in 1A or 1, but it is finally quantified after the liability is quantified in 7, I think it should still suffice the purpose of the law. Yes, Ashubhiya.
Yeah, I think new rule inserted has they have to quantify it, and it has to be shown in electronic liability register also. So without quantification, it cannot be recovered. And
So
for
the
that-
question is, it is not quantified in the show cause summary. It is quantified in DRC 07, that is the order summary, but there is no interest shown in the show cause summary. So you receive show cause, along with that you receive 1 or 1A. At that time, they have not quantified the interest, but they are quantifying it.
Yes. Because if we see the application of section 50, as Avinash has also discussed, interest has to be followed by the tax. And if I've written, it will subject to interest and penalty, the calculations will be done once the tax calculation is done. So I think
Right.
post adjudication, if it is quantified in DRC 07, that suffices the purpose for that purpose.
Yes, Avinash B.
No, I'll agree with this, but at the same time, does it not make 75(9) redundant? Let us do
this
75(9).
Yeah, 1 second. I have it here also.
It was 75(9) or 74(9). You show that
75(9). 75(9).
75(9). What does it say? The interest on the tax
Tax
not
short.
paid or not paid shall be payable, whether or not is specified in the order determining tax liability. So how does it matter? How does it matter whether it is there in GSTR 1, DRC 1A, 1 or 7? Even if it is not there in 7. See, please
7.
understand. Order is passed today in 2021. I paid 10%, went in appeal. Now it is being decided in 2035. So the interest does not like freezes on 2021 when the DRC 7 is issued. Interest goes on, and 2035 till 2035 I have to calculate the interest. So therefore I am of the view that it will not make any difference even if it is quantified in 1A or 1 or 7. It has to be followed as per section 75(9), which is automatic.
Great. So these are the queries that we had collated. I think now we can go to the chat box and take a few queries from there. If any of the panelists have any specific inputs on this,
And in 5-7 minutes, I'll also leave. So you both can continue because I have to reach to the airport.
I think we can take up the queries in that much time.
Please take it.
So Devinder ji is saying, kindly refer instruction 1/2022 dated 7 Jan, which said, even if tax or interest pertains to 7512, then notice will be issued. However, this notice is only for limited purpose of difference of turnover in GSTR 1 and 3B. This is my humble submission and I have shared this with you only. In fact, communication and not notice. Yes, so I think that is what is the point. We are also saying that there has to be a communication, but there is no requirement of notice. So I think we are on the same page. Yes, sir. Without tax paid, no return can be filed. Yes. Remains unpaid as on what date? Current date when notice is issued, or as on due date. Achha. Rajesh ji is saying whether just words interest thereon after adjudicating tax will suffice or amount has to be ascertained for interest. Many SCNs are issued with this kind of wordings. So I think Rajesh ji, we
Yes,
just
sir.
discussed, correct, na?
Yes, we have discussed it.
Yeah, we have discussed this. Next is Kaushik ji, how to file appeal against the notice DRC 1C 1D on the GSTN website. Okay, so I think this is a follow-up question to our view that Avinash Bhaiya feels that even these communications are challengeable. But now Kaushik is asking, how is it possible on the portal?
I'm not the right person to answer this, but what I can say is now 108, rule 108 permits a manual appeal also.
Yeah.
If it is not permissible online, go and file manual appeal.
Rajiv ji is saying, can SCN for interest only portion be issued where tax stand already discharged? Can interest be recovered without specifying time of supply, which is normally not specified in SCN as well as order? So there are two questions. First, whether SCN only for interest can be issued if tax is already discharged. I believe yes. Other panelists, your views?
This is what we are discussing since last 1 hour.
Yeah,
Whether it should be issued or not. If
correct.
they are issuing, then they are doing something which was not required as per the department.
Next is, can department, Ravina ji is asking, can department demand interest on creditors ITC reversal for non-payment if ECL balance is maintained of such ITC claim? Okay, so it means you have claimed ITC. Later on, it is found that you have not paid to your creditors within 180 days. And now there is a reversal requirement for this non-payment. And you always carry that much balance in your ECL, whether interest will be required.
No, 50 subsection 3 is very
Yes, it is very clear. 75.7. Somit ji is saying the amount of tax, interest, and penalty demanded in the order shall not be in excess of the amount specified in the notice. Fine. And no demand shall be confirmed on the grounds other than the grounds specified in the notice. Right, sir? But
it is about notice. And even if
yeah,
it is about tax, it
correct.
doesn't
Talk about
the
interest.
character of interest.
Right. I think his point is with respect to interest. Right. Is demand of interest valid if not quantified? I think we have just answered that.
Vishal, just a minute.
Yeah.
Avinash, we have to go to the section 75.7. It talks about amount of tax, interest, and penalty. It is saying all three things.
Yeah.
Correct.
What I feel, Sumit Goyal, what is asking, on the one hand side, section 75.7 says, the amount of tax, interest, and penalty, the order shall not be in excess of the amount specified in the notice. One point we have first,
So
interest is specified in a notice. It is directly shown in the order or DRC 07. So the question here is, what is the significance of section 75.7? What I feel, Sumil, that is the question.
Got it. But here the point is, that is the reason why they are not specifying the amount of interest.
Correct.
They say interest is applicable under section 50.
So it means there can be three type of notices if we bifurcate it. One, where the interest is exactly mentioned, leave that will suffice the purpose. Second is where the amount they are saying as per the provision of section 50. And the third type of notice where they are not specifying the interest as per the provisions of section 50.
Correct.
That can be challenged on the basis of section 75.7.
Correct. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah, Vishal. Yeah, Vishal, please continue.
Yeah. Jitendra ji saying the Limitation Act is applicable on admitted liability. Is there any case law in that even the income tax department are demanding 10-year-old interest amount?
There is no case law as of now. But yes, this issue is now taking a heat. And therefore, maybe we'll have to wait and watch. Someday or the other, there might be some. Because interest amount, generally people are not disputing, they are paying or they are recovering. So it all depends, but time will come wherein somebody will dispute and there will be an order.
Kamalji saying, sir, which is GST return is final return, whether 1, 3B or 9? Department asking for tax demand based on 1. In earlier years of GST, there is genuine mistakes in GST return. GST don't accept its limitation while issuing notices for earlier years. Okay. Jagdish ji saying, if any additional tax demand arises in appeal order due to mismatch of GSTR 2A, is interest payable on it if dealer has continuous ITC balance? Sir, I think if there is a continuous ITC balance, there should be no interest even on the additional liability created at any later stage. Regarding 75(9), though interest is not quantified in any notice, yes, is it necessary to specify time of supply? So this question is it necessary to specify time of supply? I think his question is whether time of supply is required to be specified in the show cause.
How does it matter?
This is what I'm
When
thinking.
75(9) is there, no? So the person who was showing 75(7) also
Mhm.
needs to appreciate 75(9 because 75(7) में लिख दिया 1 लाख रुपए का एक इंटरेस्ट करना है. But 75(9) क्या बोलता है कि even if there is no mentioning in the order, it is recoverable. And that 75(7), if I am reading it correctly, that is pertaining to the show cause notice. Generally, they were never quantify any amount of the interest in the show cause notice. Because as you rightly said that unless it is determined that this liability is there, where is the question of determining the amount of interest?
Jitesh is asking any judgment in case delayed file of GSTR 3B and interest not paid, and in case undisputed self-assessed tax liability. So I think this is your point where Bhaiya, you said that conservatively you may pay interest, but otherwise interest is not applicable. So is there any judgment on this?
I have not found any judgment.
Ravi ji is saying intimation DRC 1B or 1D are intimation and not notice or adjudication. How can it be recovered in section 79? Sir, I think there is a specific rule now 142, which 142B, if I'm not wrong, which specifically says that for the purpose, anyway, 79 does not require any mechanism. It is there for recovery itself, but just maybe as a matter of prior intimation before initiating any harsh action, they have provided for these intimations. So I don't think there should be any challenge in intimating you the liability or the amount that they are going to recover. And I don't think it will be breach of section 79. Shiva Kumarji, payment to creditor made beyond 180 days, department is issuing notice for payment of interest. So, sir, I think interest is applicable. Rajiv Sharma ji, can interest be recovered without specifying? Sir, I think we have answered this, that there is no need to specify time of supply. That maybe you can argue when you are replying to the show cause in your PH. Can we go for penalty waiver after DRC 07? We paid tax and interest within 30 days. Or alternatively, we can wait for amnesty. Sir, where the law itself provides that penalty shall be waived, I think the law does not anyway see if it is provided for in the order, and if you pay it within 30 days, automatically the penalty is waived. This is provided in the section itself. So I don't think you need to do any specific other act. You simply pay the discounted penalty.
What I understand is that for getting that reduced penalty, you have to pay that 15% of the penalty also.
Right, but I think he's asking about the total penalty. Let us say the
he has paid tax and interest, but
yeah,
not the penalty, and that has been paid within 30 days. But the penalty is yet to be paid. Then
I think the benefit is not there.
Benefit will not be there.
Correct. Then obviously, if you can wait for the amnesty by chance if there is any. Notification 12/24 dated effective from, okay. Sir, but department demanding interest as per rule 37(3) for creditors non-payment reversals. Ravina ji, I think we clarified that if there is ITC balance, there should be no interest. Yash ji saying whether exempt and non-GST supplies are take for calculation of ISD ratio. Yes, ji, right now, this is not the topic we are discussing. But if you're asking me, if I have to answer, you have to consider that also, because the word uses turnover, and turnover includes even exempt supplies. Radha Krishnan ji is saying, will demand of tax on account of ineligible ITC availed tantamount to tax not paid, short paid for the purpose of 75(9)? Any inputs on this?
Yeah, what is the question?
Will demand of tax on account of ineligible ITC availed tantamount to tax not paid or short paid for the purpose of 75(9)?
I don't think
he's distinguishing between like
ITC
73.
reversal,
Ah,
ineligible ITC, no?
hmm.
So that I've already stated that we are not going into that dispute because section 50 does not provide for that. There is only 150 subsection 3 which speaks about it, na? Interest,
Hmm.
in case where the credit is wrongly taken. So today I think we should not go venture into that. We'll have another session for discussing this.
Okay.
But 50 subsection 3 is there. We need to take consideration into of that, and accordingly we'll have to decide about the interest. But yes, 74, 75, 9, we can certainly say that it is not applicable.
Perfect. So we have catered to all the queries.
I will also have to leave now.
And yeah, so Pramod ji, if you are available. I think he's not available. So fine, on behalf of Team Ashwa, I thank everyone for being present over here. And yes, we have our webinars every Friday on the same time, 4 to 5. So we request that your presence and support is always appreciated. Your inputs, professional insights are always helpful for everyone present over here. So thank you everyone on behalf of all of us present over here. And thank you all the renowned panelists for sharing your learned and very candid views. Thank you all, and looking forward to meet you all again on next Friday with the next burning topic. Thank you. That's it all for today.